I call this meeting to order. It's 5:30 on January 7th. We're going to be opening up our Layton City work meeting. So to start off our meeting, council, do you have any reports? Anybody on any of their committees? I know it's holiday week, so probably not much going on. No?
Got something?
Just that the
Okay, talk up here.
Legislative Affairs Committee for the Chamber's meetings won't begin until January 28th. They should have began today, but they're being held off. And tomorrow we're meeting with the Youth Council Advisor and Layton Community Action Council and looking at possibly reorganizing and refocusing the Youth Council.
Excellent. Okay. Mr. Morse?
The Utah League of Cities and Towns sent a letter from the Utah Department of Health about vaccines being available for first responders. And so we reached out to, along with a letter, reached out to Chief Swanson and Chief Ward, and they're already in the middle of those vaccinations. So that's good news for the first responders here in Layton.
Yeah, so we're about a week ahead of what they anticipated, which is great. Did you have anything?
You know, just I've been getting a lot of phone calls for the light thing,
The light thing?
the Christmas light, where you know.
Yeah.
And they keep saying thanks, and I said, look, I was just with them. I don't know who created it, whatever. But anyway, I just wanted to say I had a good time, and I hope that we continue this, because it was, yeah, I've had more phone calls on that than anything. You know,
Well, good.
nobody
That's a
picking
good
up
thing, then.
garbage or whatever. So
That means our message was successful then, because I mean, that was the intent. And once again, thanks everyone for participating in that. And I think it is a fun project that perhaps we can continue next year as well. Okay, anyone else? Okay, well, I actually, rather than do my mayor's report later, I would like to do it now because, as you guys are aware, Kathy's going to be retiring. And we've gone through this selection process of hiring a new secretary. So I'd like to introduce you to Linda. And so Linda, if you wouldn't mind, if you want to come up here to the podium. And just so you guys can meet our new secretary. She actually works for the mayor and council, as well as in the office there. But Linda, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and, introduce yourself to the council members so they all know who you are.
Hi, my name's Linda Lartiga. My family and I just moved here from Texas. My husband's in the military, so that's kind of what brings us in. We've got 2 kids. My daughter's 18 and my son's 15, so they're older kiddos. And we're excited to be here in Layton, so thank you.
yeah, we're in Texas.
San Antonio, Texas?
It's a great place.
Yes.
Great people were born there.
Yeah, so was I.
To give you a list of one.
Did you? Were you there?
Yeah, it's an Air Force.
Yeah, I was born there too.
Lackland, so, yeah.
I thought you was going to say, remember the Alamo.
That too, but that was just like a week before I was born.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to be here and for the opportunity to work with all of you and the city of Layton. So thank you for that.
Okay.
Cool.
And thank you. And I understand today is council members Morris and Day are celebrating birthdays. So we've got some cookies to pass out. If it's okay, I can do that now.
Who's celebrating birthdays? Are you serious?
Well, Clint was on Monday, and Tom, you're coming up Monday, so
And both of them have special birthdays coming up too. so-
monumental birthdays.
Monumental. Oh, it's just old.
Oh, so you guys get first choice.
You don't want to talk old, okay?
Still a pup.
So they've got
Yeah.
the names on them.
We'll have names.
Oh, they have names, yeah.
Like what they.
So mine has no sugar.
No, it says
No,
sugar.
like
Did my
what type
wife
of
call?
cookies.
I can put no next to the sugar.
Look for Dave.
No, it's
No, it's
not.
it's the kind of cookie.
Oh, I
Never
can't.
found. I've never found it.
Gordon. Okay, well, it looks like Mr. Crane was able to select his favorite cookie off the tray, so I believe you're next up in our meeting.
It won't be there.
Oh, yum.
It won't be there.
This is
Soon
the
as I'm
hard part.
done, I'm leaving.
Yeah. Alex, I'm holding you responsible for the cookie. I'm gonna come over here
Yay.
just so you can see my best side. So, and just for the record, Dave was at the Alamo.
I was.
That's the reason he knows about it.
Yeah.
I
He
was
was-
at the Alamo.
He was there.
Yep.
Not at the
By the
same
way,
time
thank you,
John
Linda.
Wayne
You
was
can be
there, but
excused, so thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we're glad to have.
Welcome aboard. Okay, sorry.
Are you ready?
We're ready for this
See, the-
training moment.
I always know when it's my turn to speak because the mayor always says, well, you know, maybe I better put the mayor's comments up front because I may not get a word in edgewise after Crane's finished. But anyway, we appreciate it. And exciting night. You all look excited. Sorry. Alex always refers to this as almost the funeral night. When the attorney has to come and talk to you about legal issues. And so I'm hoping that it won't be that bad, but we've actually got some fun stuff at the end. What we'll do up front, if it's okay, and Mary, you let me know how much time you need and you know what you'd like to do as far as time goes. Just go like this. Alex does it all the time.
So this is
I know what
maybe,
that means. That means either go home and jump off a cliff or cut the meeting out.
hey, look
Any-
over here.
So
David,
what's
We're
this? Sorry, go ahead.
That's a curved ball over the right-hand side of the plate.
Got it.
Okay. What we'll do is, I think, to begin with, we'll do the training, if it's okay with you. And I'm going to start a little bit backwards from what it says on the agenda. We're going to start with some sexual harassment training. Public open meetings we'll cover after that, and then conflicts of interest. But at the very end, what I'd like to do is leave some time or reserve some time to talk about, you requested, I don't know if you remember this, last year you requested that we bring you up to date on the types of issues that are coming before the legislature this year. And so we're going to meet with the legislators next Thursday. And this is a year when we will need your help. We really will need your help. We've got some important issues on the docket, and we got a really, really tough system of getting in touch with our legislators. You're not going to be able to stand outside in the hallway and put in a green note and go in and talk to these people as issues occur. So you're going to have essentially their cell phone number in my two assistants, and not just assistants, but you guys are you're the main show up there. Because when you come up and ask for something, they listen to you. They see me all the time, and they'll listen to part of what I say. But when I bring the mayor or when I bring councilman from Layton City, I'm being serious about that. You make the difference. You absolutely make the difference. They see lobbyists up there all the time. But it's going to be a tough year. And so what we thought we'd do is just kind of give you an overview of those important issues at the end. If you're not totally sleeping, and if you haven't got your eyes closed, I'll share that with you at the very end. Clint, how many others went online to ULUI and watched President Wyatt's presentation on bias in land use? Anybody do that? I've got the website in the materials that you've got in front of you. It is really a worthwhile venture. And the reason I know that is I'm going to put Clint on the spot in a second just to be able to explain something. But let's start with, let me go back one. The reason it's important is because it permeates everything we do. That little thing called implicit bias will permeate all three things that I'm going to talk about tonight. It essentially is behind and fundamental to problems with sexual harassment and staying out of those problems. It has to do with conflicts of interest,
It also has to do with open meetings, the openness of individuals, of those who make the decisions for the citizens. Implicit bias is, as it's indicated here, it says, when you're driven to act in a certain ways, not because you're explicitly prejudiced, but because you may carry in your heads the thumbprint of the culture. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to point back to a couple of decisions that you've made recently and the difficulty that you've had with those decisions. I mean, take a look at the zoning decision that you just went through. Bias is not a bad thing. In fact, those biases that you build over a period of time create patterns for behavior that you essentially perform instantly. Let's go to the next slide and I'll demonstrate that a little bit. And your thought processes, sometimes they immediately go to a way of doing things, the way you've always done things. And it extends to the culture that we happen to be in. Let me go to the next example. And Clint, or you may know the answer to this, but this is my favorite. I have run this by everybody in my family. It is a dilemma. It's a surgeon's dilemma. And Clint knows the answer to this. But a father and his son are in a car accident. And the father dies at the scene. And the son, who is badly injured, is rushed to the hospital. In the operating room, the surgeon looks at the boy and says, "I can't operate on this boy. He's my son." Who's the surgeon?
His mother?
Very good. Very good. It took me maybe a half an hour to figure that out. It took my daughter like as quickly as you, Dawn, to figure that out.
She's not a lawyer.
She's not a lawyer. You're right.
I'm afraid to say what she thought
You're exactly right. And she,
without thinking about it.
That's
Oh,
right.
sorry. I always talk like this.
so 20% of adults get this question right. And the other 80% are puzzled by it and spend a lot of time thinking about it. 15% of youth from the ages of about 8 to 16 get the answer to this question. Because why? What are you looking for? What were most of you looking for? Probably what you dealt with since you were little, right? A male doctor somewhere, right?
Yeah.
That's what I kept thinking. I kept thinking, well, stepfather, grandfather. It couldn't be the grandfather. It had to be father, But logically, you've only got two parents that can call this kid son. That's a mother and a father, right? And yet, it's interesting where our minds go to, or where our thoughts, our brains, our thinking goes to. And that is essentially an illustration of implicit bias. Now, this is where I'm going to put Clint on the spot a little bit. This next one, take a look at the pictures.
This is Clint's night, obviously.
Okay. Well, he listened to the presentation, and President Wyatt, great presentation, by the way. It was on implicit bias in land use decisions. Take a look at the picture on the left. Tell me, most of you would look at that and say, when guy's in pain, he's angry, he's upset. It doesn't take you very long to figure out how to explain what's happening there, does it? Okay.
It doesn't take much time to come up with an idea.
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
It doesn't mean it's right.
right.
Right? You don't know.
Right.
But you're going to make an immediate assessment that there's something stressful in that guy's life, right? Probably. Most of you did. He's not singing. He's not happy. He's not, it's not his birthday, I don't think. Unless it's his, how old are you, Clint? I'm picking on him tonight. How old are you, Tom?
That's the magic
Okay.
number.
Yeah, like 20.
Now come over to the right. Take a look at the right. And, okay, so if you're figuring out the right-hand screen, the right-hand box, you're probably doing a calculation in your head. And the way you do that, you might do it a number of different ways, but you might go 17 times 20 is 240, and then you go 17, right?
Times 4.
Times 4. And then you might add the numbers up. Essentially, you're doing the calculation, and
And I went right to the words.
so, and the words down below, okay, tell you a little bit about the second system. The second system are going to require you to be to put some effort into it, because you're having to deliberate, you're having to calculate, you're having to think it through. The first one, you were not required to do that. You absolutely were not required to do that. And because it came naturally as a result of your past experiences. The second one will require you to do some analysis. And at the end of the reason I want to put Clint on the spot, because I want to show you how relevant this is, these two systems of thinking are. But one of the things you said at the conclusion of the hearing, you remember the zoning hearing that we had a couple of weeks ago. Who can forget the zoning hearing we had a couple of weeks ago? But Clint came up to me afterwards and he goes, he says, really, we were able to exercise those two different types of thinking. Can you talk a little bit about what you told me?
I just went with the presentation of the zoning issue. There were some passions on both sides. There was obviously public clamor that was also passionate, and it was you couple that with how I tend to think, business friendly, business first, business, just how I think. It's just how that's my career as well. And so you think about those sorts of biases, and it's just ingrained. And so here's somebody, business owner, wanting to continue his business, wanting to do, well, yeah, that makes total sense to me. And you've got people on the other side, well, no, this is this, and we don't want to have that near us. And so during the whole process, I of the public hearing, the first one, the second one, but mostly the first one, it was a wait a minute, what are we doing here? What are we trying to accomplish? What really is the business that we're supposed to be looking at tonight? And went through that in a more deliberate and reasoned fashion. And then it was clear what that decision should have been. And Don mentioned it very well when we had the second public hearing after that, when we voted. But it took me some time to get there, just because of just inherent biases that I have as far as that goes. Mm-hmm. Nothing to do with people, I guess, I don't know, but just this way of thinking.
Absolutely.
So.
Perfect example. System 1, the first hearing that you had, right? Almost totally system 1. But then I saw at different points, I saw the council begin to do the system 2, to adopt the system 2 method of thinking. That is to get out of a pattern that you're used to following, which is, I want to help this business, I want to help this person, I want to help this, whatever it happens to be. When you see that kind of thing happen, you're essentially acting based on your experience, the culture that you're used to. Everybody wants to help everybody, right? That's the whole. But then when you began to come back over to system 2 and start to think things through a little bit, you did the analysis. And the analysis was perfect. It may not have been the ultimate analysis for everybody here, for the applicant, it may not have been for the citizens if it had been a different set of rules that you were following. But the interesting thing is that you applied that. I also saw 2 of you who had a question of whether or not you ought to participate or not participate. And those also are tied to the culture that you're from. Tom, for example, knew that he could make a good decision based on his experience in being fair generally. And you're never dishonest with somebody. You want to be fair. You have treated people fairly. And so it was a fair assessment for him to say, I don't think I need to exclude myself because I really don't feel biased one way or another. I want to look at this plainly. But then when you did the analysis, it was interesting. The analysis seemed to be that, you know what, even the very appearance of that is a good thing to stay away from. And so you made a decision, I think a conscious decision, and which is the same one that you made, Zach. It's exactly the same one that you made. But what I'm saying is, do you see how some of our thinking systems actually affect the way we act and the things that we do? And it doesn't matter, the three things I'm going to talk to you tonight about, an attorney talking about the psychology of how you make a decision. That's silly. But the nice thing about it is that if you understand what's behind the thinking, you can actually make better decisions. That's the best part of it. And I saw that with Clint. I saw that with you. I saw that with Tom and Zach. I saw that with the council. I saw that with Don as you began to process very early, the system 2 type thinking. And the mayor was guiding everybody towards that. And then I don't know what Dave did. I think
Dave was lost.
I think he's still stuck in system 1, but I'm not sure. No, Dave recognized
Dave's
it
was
as well.
ignorance.
Very, very early. You
And that
recognized it.
was the part that I didn't, I was under the impression maybe some things could be done. And I thought CD doesn't really do a lot, so maybe they had some time to look. So anyway, it was all truth. It was ignorance. I didn't understand.
And ignorance is right between the two systems, right there.
Yeah. It was.
You're neither one or you're two.
When I found out, it was.
But in all
Yeah.
fairness, that's how everybody
it was
kind
a
of
moot
was that
point.
first
I mean,
time.
it wasn't,
Yeah,
you take all the emotion out, then it was
Yeah.
like, this is where it's at.
right.
Well,
It should be.
the interesting thing, what President Wyatt said, his observation, I wish I could give you an hour and a half or 2 hours of his presentation. But what he said in the end is the way that we progress in life is to change the patterns sometimes that our culture has developed in us very solidly, is to be able to say to ourselves, am I doing this right or do I need to change it? And then to actually be able to say, no, I'm not doing this right, I will change it. That's how you break system 1 and improve. That's the way we improve, is by breaking patterns. You get up every morning, you eat a big shake, and you go to. I used to have a friend that used to stop at the convenience store up on Highway 89, and he'd get a Diet Coke and he'd get Ding Dongs every single morning. Okay, it was like if he went past it, it was not religion. It was religiously wrong for him to go past that store without getting those two things. And eventually, it just became a habit. The car would almost turn itself into the convenience store. Larry Miller, that's actually what the doctors said had a big influence on what killed him, was Diet Coke and Snickers bars. He would have a Diet Coke and a large Snickers bar. That would kind of provide him with nutrition during the day. Eventually took his life, that type of habit. So the way we break those habits, the way we break the patterns, is to move outside of system 1, to get away from system 1. Sorry to spend a lot of time on that, but that is so important. It's important in your zoning decisions. It's important in what we're going to talk about in sexual harassment, especially, and what we just talked about in open meetings. You had to think those decisions that you made regarding how you're going to handle yourselves in conflicts of interest last week. It was an actual example of having to think outside of system 1 and think into system 2. So let me just play a video for you. In fact, I'm going to play 2 videos for you, if that's okay. If all goes well. Okay. Oops. Okay. Okay, take that down, take that up. Okay, I'm going to play, they're very short videos, so please just be patient with me and we'll play them really quick.
At Grovo, a big part of our mission is to help employees thrive at work, to help make their workplaces safe, inclusive, and supportive so they can perform their best. High-profile cases of harassment and the Me Too movement have reminded us that sexual harassment in all its manifestations impacts everyone in the workforce. For learning providers, practitioners, leaders, this has got to be a call to action. To create an inclusive, productive workforce, we need to address the root causes of sexual harassment. That's why we've developed new content that doesn't just help people check a box and say they completed a training. We're doing things differently. We're targeting critical mindsets and behaviors to make actual, meaningful change. We focused on 4 priorities. We're helping people see the ways in which addressing unconscious bias can help mitigate and prevent harassment at work. We're empowering employees to assess and call out the symptoms of a hostile workplace environment. We're promoting an active bystander approach that enables employees to speak up in the face of harassment to others. And ultimately, our goal is to build lasting, inclusive cultures and strong teams. Look, changing cultures doesn't happen overnight, and it certainly doesn't happen by giving employees the classic harassment prevention materials that are full of complicated legal language. It happens when you give people real, impactful learning opportunities that help them take accountability for their workplace culture, spot problematic trends, and find the words to speak up. We can catalyze change when we make it everyone's responsibility to eradicate the abusive behaviors that impact too many people every day. The momentum is on our side now. Join us, and let's finally put a stop to sexual harassment.
So I like Grovo's approach very, very much, and I'm going to go ahead and give you a sample of the next one in just a second. But before I do, I just want to say this, that the most expensive cases that IRMA fights are those related to sexual harassment. And even though IRMA was not involved in this, fortunately, Alex, but I think a year ago we talked about a $2.5 million case in West Jordan, where a police officer had been retaliated against because he had reported sexual harassment in his department. Members of the department came back after that and actually did a felony investigation on the officer, which was just harassing in nature. In the first case, they paid $80,000 to the officer for the actual harassment itself, but the cost of the retribution or the retaliation was $2.5 million. And that was in a city. That was a city here in Utah. And we know about all the others, right, out there, and we'll show the pictures of the famous people that over the last 10 years, 5 years, have actually been the subject of sexual harassment complaints and very, very large settlements. So the question is, what is this stuff? And, I could go through the legal analysis, and I did. I've got a slide that says it's quid pro quo. It's when I go to my secretary or my employee, whoever it happens to be, and say to that employee, for a raise this time, you're going to have to do a little something extra. That type. Quid pro quo, something for something. That's easy. That's the most obvious. That's the Weinstein type sexual harassment. And then there's the hostile environment. That's a little tougher, right? That's the dirty jokes. That's the, what did you do on the weekend? And, it's interesting because what she said is true, and that is that I can teach you that all day long, and you check the box and you say, okay, we've heard it. We know what it is. And that's it. That's the end of it. Unless you actually start at the top and change the culture all the way throughout an organization, or have a culture throughout an organization that does not accept that type of thing, you will find it popping up. I had a case within the last 10 years of a mayor who would come into a small staff and would actually did the interviews and the investigation on the case, but would come in on Monday morning, and he used two things. He was angry many times. He would express anger about things. And then he would also be very nice sometimes about things and ask about what intimate relationships between the individuals in the individuals in the office and their husbands or boyfriends or whatever it was over the weekend. Sometimes he would massage the shoulders of one of the ladies at the desk. This is actually a case. You would think it's so blatant. After everything we teach people, you'd think they would not even be involved with this at all, with this type of thing at all. But it was real. And I tried to figure out what was the connection between the anger all the time, because he was mean. I mean, when he came in, why wasn't this done? What did you do here? And everybody was on their toes when the mayor came in. And yet at the same time, there was this kind of a nice side of him that would almost be too nice. Long story short, the mayor left after the investigation was over and completed, rather than face some of the things that he was about to face. Very lucky for the city, very lucky for the mayor that he left, and very fortunate that these women said him leaving is enough. That's one of the things in sexual harassment, is the faster you get to the problem and the faster you get it solved, the better off you're going to be. So let's go through. I want to explain the connection between what we saw in that mayor and what happened in that workplace. It wasn't just about sex. It was not just about sex. It was obvious that it wasn't, because the meanness was related to the control that he felt he had over the people in the office. So what does sexual harassment look like? And then I'm gonna go to a second slide, and these are only like 2 minutes long, so bear with me. Let's see.
Often, when we think about sexual harassment, we think about it this way.
So I was thinking we could talk about that raise we discussed.
Oh, sure. Well, we have a lot to cover today, so we might not have time to get to that right now. Maybe you and I could grab...
Oop, sorry. That's what happens when you put an attorney over a clicker. Okay, sorry. Let's start again.
Often, when we think about sexual harassment, we think about it this way.
So I was thinking we could talk about that raise we discussed.
Oh, sure. Well, we have a lot to cover today, so we might not have time to get to that right now. Maybe you and I could grab a drink later at the bar across the street and discuss the raise then.
Okay. Is that the best place to go? Want to be kind of loud?
I feel like you and I really need to get to know each other better. Maybe we could go to my place afterwards if we need someplace quiet.
Scenes like that do a good, though sometimes awkward job of illustrating one type of sexual harassment. But unfortunately, that stereotypical scenario also ends up narrowing our definition of sexual harassment. Yes, lots of people are propositioned or asked for sexual quid pro quo, but that's not all sexual harassment is.
So what she's demonstrating is that our traditional idea of what sexual harassment is doesn't quite fit into what happened with the mayor back then. Let's, just so you know, Alex has never approached me that way, so that's a good thing. Here we go, second one. Let's see. This one here. So you might have heard that sexual harassment isn't just about sex, it's about power. But what does that really mean? And here we go.
In 2003, researchers at the University of Padua in Italy told a group of men that they'd be participating in an experiment on visual memory. The subjects were asked to choose images to send to a man and a woman, both of whom were imaginary. They were told that the imaginary man and woman would later have to remember what images they were sent. Half of the subjects were told that women were better at the task than men. Those subjects were more likely to send questionable images, like pornography, to the imaginary woman. Basically, when the male subject's power, their traditional masculinity, was threatened, they were more likely to sexually harass. That's what we mean when we say that sexual harassment is about power. It's when someone, it's often a man, but it can certainly be a woman, uses something sexual, in this case pornography, to put someone in their place.
So the relationship between the anger that the mayor showed and the harassing activities of the mayor were based on, or they essentially came about as a result of what? Power, right? And that's in the case of Weinstein, in the case of Matt Lauer, in the case of all those folks that you saw. Most of those, many of them had nothing to do with sex in the workplace or out of the workplace. They had more to do with power. And in the case of this mayor, that was the way he maintained power over the three people, the three ladies that happened to be in the office, was through anger, through getting upset, through getting angry. So they were always on edge when they were there. That's what sexual harassment is based on, is control and the need for control. And when we see it happening, we have a zero tolerance policy in Layton City for sexual harassment. Do you agree with this? I mean, do you understand what we're trying to get at? It really, oftentimes, I can tell you this, that the mayor of this community was as good a man as you could get in almost every way. That he had a wife that he loved and, would never be involved in probably those things beyond just trying to establish that power in the workplace. And usually the place where that occurs is where there's a difference in power between two people. And you've got one that is trying to establish it or maintain it, and the other one that doesn't really have any say in the matter, doesn't have the power to fight back or to push back because they're in a position where they can't do that. So there are a couple of things. As they go through the training, I'd encourage you, and I put the website there. There are 10 little short clips, and those teach a little bit in each of those clips of how to push back, of how to effectively push back, of how to intervene, of how to encourage our employees to intervene, of how to politely, a lot of times these people don't even know they're doing it, quite frankly. When I brought it to his attention, he was very, very surprised that there was offense taken to the way that he was approaching everything. And many times it's just something that, remember we talked about the two different structures. It's essentially an implicit bias. That's the way he's always been. That's the way he's always established power in his home, power in his, with family, power with other people, is to become angry, but particularly the females in the office. The males, no problem. That would not occur. So anyway, that's the focus. That's what we're aiming at here in Layton. Let me go back to my presentation and click over. And so here's our top four when it comes to settlements. And these men settle for millions of dollars. And let's see if I can. I just got to get close so I can see it. Wait. Okay. All right. So sexual harassment training is most important when it's tailored to the workplace where we work. And it must be part of a culture. In Layton, there is a zero tolerance for sexual harassment. I've seen situations where an individual has sent comments on a computer through text mail and has lost his job over that. I've seen other situations where jokes have been told repeatedly, even after warnings, and somebody has been offended by that. They were not just your regular bad jokes, they were really bad jokes. And there are other situations that, but we address them very quickly. That is part of the solution to not paying large damages, is to address it. The faster you address it, probably the first question you get asked is, what type of system did you have for reporting it? And in Layton, you can report it to anybody above you. It can be all the way to the mayor or any city council person can be a source for those complaints. And because it may be somebody else, it may be another council member, maybe a member of administration, maybe a guy in the attorney's office. And so we give the employees the opportunity to report sexual harassment to anybody, or to that power thing to anybody. We also invite those who observe it to report those things. So, and that's the important thing, is to make sure that as we train people, that they understand the underlying reason for it, and then we try and create a culture where that underlying reason doesn't exist. Have you ever, especially the female council members, gone into a room where you've got a meeting going on, and the person who's running the meeting comes in, looks around, and says, "Oh, Don, would you take notes on this meeting for us?" Have you ever noticed that?
Well, I'll share one with you. I was in a meeting of a bunch of chief of police, and I was to present to them when I worked in child abuse prevention, and I was sitting in the room, and the guy got up and said, I really am sorry, but I don't see our presenters arrived yet. Because he was expecting a Dawn, and never in his wildest dream would I've been the only female in the room addressing this chiefs of police convention. And that is the first time I really ever felt some form of sexual harassment or harassment because I was a female.
It can come in all kinds of subtle things. You think of the myriad of things. That's one very, very good example, right? Looking for a Dawn, D-O-N, right? But sometimes, you relegate the responsibility of taking notes to the secretary, right? Has to be a she, can't be a he, Or sometimes you don't invite a member to a meeting because of, you don't feel that they're quite intelligent enough. One of the examples they gave in this, in her presentation, was a lady who worked for an IT company that was an excellent engineer and who had come up with a solution to a very significant problem for the company, but was not able to get that solution approved until a male counterpart actually came up with a similar solution, which was less effective, but then her solution became relevant. And it's just an interesting story. It was a fight for her to be able to establish her proposition over the male's proposition. And sometimes, we had an Uber car driver who happened to be the #1 guy in the company. I mean, nobody made more money than the Uber car driver did. And because of his position, the company really would not do very much about all the complaints that they received about harassing or power plays that essentially he would perform in the company. So it comes in all different forms. It's in every organization. We try to reduce it, eliminate it. Some different types of jobs are more susceptible to it than others, but we all have a responsibility to watch for it. And when it happens, we have a responsibility to eliminate, to try to work to eliminate it. As a staff, these are our goals, very similar to the goals that the company Grovo actually proposes. And that is empowering employees to spot the symptoms of hostility, not downplaying it when somebody comes to you with a complaint. Promoting an active bystander approach, in other words, making sure that everybody, you are encouraged to intervene. That doesn't mean intervening does not mean jumping in the middle of it and calling the guy an attacker and the other person a victim, but it's just more, it may be as simple as coming up and giving this person the opportunity to exit the situation. But there's some great training online for that. We don't have time tonight, but helping people address unconscious bias, we've talked about that tonight. And once again, I think that is just an incredibly important thing for our own personal progress as city council people and as planning commissioners, to be able to put our biases aside and to be able to do the type 2, the system 2 analysis when we come across the decisions that you have to make, and not falling into the category of listening to public clamor or some of the other things that distract from doing that analysis. Any questions on this?
Gary, I just have one, and I know of a couple of companies that have kind of gone away from sexual harassment training to just simple harassment training. Mm-hmm. Because not only is the sexual harassment an issue, but it's gender bias, it's religious bias, it's ageism, racial. I mean, those in my mind are just as great of an error to make as sexual harassment. And so does the city provide this as an overview of all kinds of harassment? I mean, I would hope that if an employee sees or hears religious, comments about somebody or somebody that may have a gender difference, an alternative gender status or whatever, that those issues are monitored just as well as just sexual harassment are.
Very good. Precisely the same. The only reason you're being trained on sexual harassment is because there's a legal requirement that you do that. Through IRMA, we require that you do that. But yes, absolutely. Any type of hostile environment that is created, there are instances where we've had anger issues with some bosses or supervisors that have made life for the underlings just absolutely very, very difficult. There have been instances, and there will always be instances, where a person of a different race or a different gender is a big thing these days, and it is becoming a protected class, essentially, is what it is becoming. And so, yes, any type of harassment at all, the city is not tolerant of any of those. And I can give you experiences where the city has stepped in and shut it down very quickly. Okay.
Probably need to speed it up a little bit.
We'll do it. And I'll tell you how we'll do it. This is probably actually the most important. Open and public meetings. Because of how slow I went in the first part of this presentation and how important I feel that is,
Fine.
I put all the answers in this for you. Okay.
That's a setup.
That's it. So the next several pages are just essentially questions and answers. And what I wanted to do for that, what time do you want me to end? 6:30? 6:20?
Chad, how much time do you need on yours? Because, I mean, we do want to cover the inspection program.
Yeah.
10 or 15 minutes.
Okay, and then your amended plot. Okay, so we'll give you about another 10 minutes?
That'd be
max?
great. Yeah, that'd be fine. So all the answers that you will ever need on open meetings are in red, because I knew that the first part would be slow, but I thought the first part was important and probably most important, especially the conversation on implicit bias. But any questions that you have on open meetings? especially in light of lately, we've had a lot of electronic meetings and a lot of issues and questions regarding open meetings and Zoom meetings, for example, between city council people. You know, 3 of you decide to get on a Zoom call. Is that a meeting? Well, if it's convened for the purpose of doing the public's business, it amounts to a meeting. And there's 3 of you there, a quorum there, it would amount to a meeting. We've had a lot of questions on texting. Yeah. When you all text together, 3 of you were to text together, it would be, in order to, it would be the convening of a meeting if you were making decisions on something you were going to have to decide here in the dais one of these days. Did you have a question, Dave?
You made a comment, I don't know when, week ago, 2 weeks, 5 weeks, about 3. And we all were under the assumption that was council. But you said if it was 2 council and the mayor, that constituted a meeting.
Okay, so the mayor doesn't vote except in the case of a
We understand that.
tie. And
So I'm
so,
not talking about voting.
yeah, I probably misspoke, but if you were there and you were talking, the mayor and 2 council people were talking about anything to do with what she can actually vote on, then that would be a
Oh, if
quorum.
she could vote on it.
Uh-huh.
But just meeting with 2 council and a mayor.
You're fine.
Is not, okay.
Yeah, you're
Because the
fine.
impression I got, and I think a couple others were,
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's my fault for not clarifying.
okay.
But she is a member of the council. This is
Sure.
6-member council, but no, if it's not something she can vote on, the mayor can certainly call 2 council people in and talk to you. In fact, we've done that a lot of times. When there's been an issue that needed to be talked about, maybe it might be somebody that,
Okay, I just,
that's a good question.
for a curveball, I thought,
Sorry for the curveball. It's
oh,
a-
curveball. No.
I'll throw a knuckleball next time. So, so electronic meetings, the other piece of that is, I remember one of the first meetings I went to as a young attorney up in Summit County, and there were 3 Summit County commissioners. And we were there for a zone change for this client that I happened to be representing. He probably thought, oh my heck, this kid. But the 3 commissioners kept talking back and forth to each other out of the mic, away from the mic. And they'd be looking at his plans and they'd be kind of pointing out different things regarding the plans. I could tell they were talking about my client's project. And I thought to myself, this can't be the way open meetings work. And, you know, sometimes just the appearance of doing that has brought a lot of woe to city council people, because even though you might be talking about the party last night or the lights at the park or something like that, when you talk to each other on the dais, everybody thinks you're talking about their issue. I don't know if you've noticed that, but especially where you have the video going the whole time. It looks like you're collaborating outside of the view of the public on the issues that you're discussing. Anything else that, this really explains a lot to you, but let me just ask a question. What are the official minutes of a meeting? Because Kim works so hard on them. If we go to court, what are the official minutes of the meeting? That's exactly right. Exactly right, Tom. It's the written minutes that are passed. Now, does that mean that the recorded minutes don't mean anything at that point? In other words, can they be used? Can they be used in court? Sure they can, but only to demonstrate that the official minutes, or what the official minutes are saying, they are not the official minutes of the meeting. Even though they may say something very, very different, if you approve them as the actual minutes of the meeting in written form, that becomes the minutes that the court would look at. So when you get those minutes, take a look at them. Kim sends them out to you, right? And you read through them. Make sure your statements are correct in those minutes, because it's not the recording. that is the actual minutes of the meeting. Another question. Any other questions that you have?
I had a question on that one, Gary. So most of the time the minutes aren't very detailed.
Mhm.
So what if somebody wanted to bring out something that was more detailed in the minutes?
They could do that. They could bring it up. They could listen to the minutes of the meeting. That they still exist. They could listen to the recordings. But when it comes to an official, what actually happened at the meeting, the courts really only look at what you see, what you're seeing.
But if they wanted more detail, could they go to that recording?
Could the court go to the recording? They could. They could. They could go to that recording to demonstrate that the minutes, even though they say they voted positive on this thing because it was consistent with the general plan, to show that during the course of the meeting, that was not the case. You know, that it was something exactly opposite. But that's really the only way, that's really the only time that I think it would be relevant, is if Kim had really gotten the exact reverse interpretation of what had actually been said. But if something has been said and something's been recorded, it's presumed that you read it and you're okay with it when the minutes actually are proposed to you. And so if you have changes or you want to put more detail in it, make sure you do that, because that's really it. That's really it. Nobody's going to win based on the verbal items. Any other questions?
Yeah, just a quick question. You've done a great job of training us into not meeting other than official business, and Mason's done a great job with the Planning Commission as well, probably even more, scaring them. My question, though, is about events. We're together in events. There's communication about, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that for city events. What's your recommendation as far as that communication and us gathering for those types of city events?
So, as Dave Church would often say, the key word is convened. What purpose are you convened for? Are you convened to take care of the business of the public? And you could do that. In just a few minutes, you could pull three of you together over at the park and convene yourself to talk about something that was on the agenda next week. That would be a problem. Yeah. But if you're just over at the park, or you're just observing something or reviewing something, say all of you meet out in the site and you're all looking at it together, as long as you don't talk about it and convene a meeting, you're gonna bump into each other anyway. So does that help? Yeah. It has to be convened for that purpose. And so if it's not convened for that purpose and you don't use it for that purpose, you're okay to do whatever you need to do.
And then I have one, and let me just first of all, Kim, thank you for the minutes. They're always really, really good and very timely. And that's kind of my question with this, Gary. Is there a time that is expected that minutes are presented to us for our review? In Planning Commission, we had one, and it was many months, maybe almost 11 months before the minutes got to us, and we were asked to approve minutes, and they were approved to the best of our remembrance because so many months had passed by. Mm-hmm. So how does that handle? I mean, like I said, this has never been a problem here, but is there a time limit that says that Kim has until this time to get those minutes in draft form to us?
She has 3 days to make the audio available, but there's really not I don't think there's a time period for it. It's just a reasonable period of time.
Okay.
Yeah, that would probably be unreasonable. Just saying. I hope that doesn't happen very often, but yeah.
Well, I think what's happened is they went back and were maybe auditing their minutes or something and realized that they had failed to submit one of them to us.
Okay.
And like I said, we went ahead and approved them with the stipulation to the best of our remembrance, because we didn't want to be held responsible for something that wasn't really within our fault that it took so long to get it. And I'm sorry, my mind doesn't go back that far sometimes.
It may even be reasonable based on the fact that it was just lost, but if that was a continual pattern, I think you'd have problems. Well, I'm just about at the end, I think. Conflicts of interest. You guys understand probably better than any council I've ever seen. Just maybe demonstrated by what you did at the last meeting. And that is, there's a rule of thumb. And that is, if it looks like there's a conflict, it's probably a good idea to, can't people be nasty, Tom? They can.
Yeah, they can be, but
They can.
generally they're not.
They can. Some people can be nasty about it. But like you say, Layton's, we've not had really, really bad experiences when it comes to that. But at the same time, it's a pecuniary interest that kicks off the conflict of interest. So if you have an actual financial interest, that's a very powerful reason for recusing yourself. But it's all self-determined. All self-determined. And so you have to make that determination yourself. And the council can't make it for you and kick you off if they think that you got a conflict. But it may jeopardize the opinion in the end that you give, or the decision that you make in the end, because it may be used in court to demonstrate that you had a bias that was extreme. And if you happen to be the swing vote, that may hurt in an administrative determination. In legislative determination, it probably won't hurt that much. But it's fairness. That's what you're trying to get to. I am right at 1 minute after the time that you gave me, so I'm just going to leave it at that. And are there any other questions that you have that I could answer for you?
So you want this
What about-
updated one tonight?
The conflict of interest?
If you can hand it to me anytime, or bring it into Linda anytime, that would be great. And she'll deliver it to us. So I'm going to leave this list of issues, and I apologize because I've gone over, but if there's some time after Chad is finished explaining his program, then I think the other two items on the agenda are pretty plenary. They're not complicated, right? So I'd be glad to go over the legislative issues with you with whatever time is left with Chad, if that's all right, Mayor.
Yeah, and council, what I think Gary's alluding to is obviously next week we've got that meeting. So if there's any items between now and when Chad's finished that we'd like to add to the agenda to discuss with our legislators, then certainly let him know. So, okay.
And in addition, before you go in there, I'd like to tell you about a couple of bad ones so that you can,
Okay. Well, then we'll-
understand them
Okay.
before. So if there's time.
Okay, well, we'll turn the time over to Chad and see how much time he takes.
Chad?
Mr. Wilkinson.
Have Chad do it.
I'll just turn it off.
Want me to just do it?
There, I think. Yep. You gotta get behind her, don't you?
I got her. Thank you. Yeah. I think we may have had one of the files closed, but I'll make my comments very, very quick. This was something that was requested of us a few weeks ago. We wanted to just give you a little bit of an update on the city inspector program. We've had that up and running for about a year now. I'm going to open a file up that I think is kind of a cool visual related to the city inspector. The city inspector program was implemented back in September of 2019, September 5th of 2019 to be exact. And this is a picture of our downstairs storage area for building permits. Interestingly enough, within the first year, 365 days since we implemented this, we issued 1,926 building permits. That's just over 20 full boxes of plans. That was a great visual that Weston provided for us. So that's an entire section of shelving in our storage area. Not only does that represent storage area, but it also represents time. Eventually, as we would have got new permits, that area would have had to have had a staff member go down, weed through those permits, pull out site plans, put things in certain places so that we can make room for the next year's permits. And one of the big benefits of this online permitting software is that no longer has to happen. We don't have to be selective about even the documents we keep because everything is online, stored on a server somewhere. And so we can keep a lot more documentation than we used to, and with a lot less room, and also saving that staff time. A couple other things I just wanted to hit on really quickly that I think are real benefits of this program. We're able to perform simultaneous reviews of our permits now, which is a really big deal. Before, it was a linear process. One plan reviewer would get it, start with planning. Planning would look at it for whatever time period, week, or whenever they could get to that permit on their schedule. After that, they'd complete their review. They'd forward it on to the next person. These are all paper copies, right? Hard paper copies. They'd forward that plan on to the next person. That next person would do their review, and it became a very time-consuming and linear process. Now, with the way that we handle these permits, it's handled, the reviews are going on simultaneously. So our building folks are reviewing at the same time as our planning staff, which again, that cuts that time frame down substantially. It allows us to do better reporting. We can produce reports with building permits that used to take hours of staff time to extract the data from the permits and put them together on a spreadsheet. Now those reports are immediately produced by this program. One big benefit to our contractors and our developers is that they can immediately see the status of their permit. They can get online in real time and say, where's my permit at? How many days has it been in the system? Who's the one that maybe has a hold on it? That puts them in contact with that person very, very quickly if there needs to be something resolved. Some permits, in fact, can be reviewed almost immediately. Things that are not requiring any kind of plan review, like a simple water heater replacement or a simple roof permit where it's just a reshingle, something like that doesn't require any plan review, that just requires inspections. People can log in, put their plans in, almost immediately have that permit issued to them. A couple other things to hit on, then I'm going to actually show you the program. I think that might be of interest to you. We have a system where after a permit's approved, the applicant receives an email with the required next steps, and that's a big deal. In the past, we were reliant on a staff member to go through and say, okay, which permits have been approved? Is everything done? Coordinate with that, then contact the applicant by phone or by email. Now that's automatically generated. As soon as that last person hits approved, that email is generated to that applicant with the fees, with everything they need to issue that permit. So again, cutting down that time frame. I'm going to I want to let you get to some of those legislative issues because they are important. So I'm going to I think we may have got logged out, unfortunately, here with so I'm going to log back into the system.
While you're bringing that up, I'm just going to make a quick analogy. It was kind of interesting. You said there was 1,920 building permits?
1,900, yep.
Oh, 1,900.
Well,
I thought you said 1920 because I said, isn't that ironic that that's the year that Layton was incorporated?
Yeah, it was just over
1920.
1920, yep.
Yep. That's just fun fact.
You got me in between glasses here, so real quick. So. And I had this open, but I think it accidentally got closed. So So if someone was logging on as an outside person coming in, this is the account that they'd go to for staff. And go to different place. It's harder to type on the fly.
So Chad, that's somebody even that would want to replace a roof or any of those minor things would go through that same login and procedure?
Yeah, this is having a hard time getting back to that page, but they'd go into that same login and procedure. I had this, like I say, I had this set up, but it looks like let me get the right address here. Okay, I'm doing .org when I ought to do .com. That's the problem. So if I want to, as a plan reviewer, get onto this website and review a plan, I'm going to go to this login. I'm going to type in my credentials. I didn't mean for you to have to watch me type this in, so I apologize for that. So this gives essentially a start screen that I can go from. You can see that not only building permits, but also things like chicken and duck permits, eventually code enforcement are all things that we can access from this page. Yeah, there's chicken and duck permits, all right.
Did we have to put that one on there?
This is an interesting thing. So as a plan reviewer, every day as I log on to this, I can go right to my work schedule. This shows the permits that have been submitted, the steps that that we need to take to review. As we go down, you can see the green shows permits that were approved. I'm going to type in or I'm just going to go to one of these permits. You can see what that interface looks like, but it's a very intuitive interface that you can get right to the information. You can see that all the different plan reviewers have a spot where they go for those plan reviews. I can actually look at where those plans are with any of our inspectors, any of our reviewers, and say, what items need to be reviewed, what are left to be resolved before we issue this permit. And so it's a really good interface for us. Weston has set up a couple of just kind of example permits for me that I'm going to go to just really briefly to show you one thing that I know was important during our review of that, some of the issues that we had with building inspections previously earlier in the year. When you look at the inspection process, one of the things that we were able to do because of this new software, before we were really dependent on the developer to request the inspections at the right order and at the right time. What could happen is you had a subcontractor, for example, that maybe was working on the plumbing, and they would call for an inspection, however, before steps that they really needed to do before. For example, maybe the footing and foundation inspection had not been completed yet because they never called for it. And now we've got a rough plumbing or another inspection that's being called for that just really is out of order and shouldn't be done before other inspections have been completed. We were really reliant on the applicants to be on top of that and make sure they call for the right inspection in the right order. Now, if you look at this note below, this just simply cannot be scheduled by staff or by an applicant without this step being done. So you can see that it says must pass footing drain first in order for that rough framing, to be approved. Other inspections you can see there. So that's a significant improvement in our process. It will cut down on that human error side of things where we might have an inspection called for out of order, and make sure that we get those things done and make sure that everything's done before we issue a certificate of occupancy. You can see that some of those other ones, temp C of O, final CO, those are things that have to be completed before you can see all the steps. Must pass permanent power first before they can get a temp or a final C of O. So there's steps that have to be followed in order to have that happen. Yeah, Dave?
We have the ability to adjust what we need in the program.
We do, yeah.
So we can do the thing, yeah.
Yes, and this is a local company that the Utah company, I should say, that's put this program together. Someone with a lot of experience in the building inspection industry,
but we still have the ability.
But we can still customize. You bet. Yeah, and so this
go through them, or do we have a
little bit of both? We do have some software support sometimes, but we also have staff that are able to make changes internally if we need to. This is a perfect example of that. This was something we identified in that process that needed to be fixed, so we fixed it. We put those steps in place, and it's been a really, really big deal for us. And it really helps our inspectors too. It's not just helping the public; it helps them too. They've got so many inspections to do each day, and that's one thing to show you that this allows for me as the community development director to go in and say, okay, who's working on what? I'm going to pick on Nate. Sorry, Nate, if you're watching, but I can go to his schedule and pull that right up, and it shows me what Nate's scheduled for the day. And I can, look at it. We typically get a lot of requests the day before for next day inspections. We don't do same day inspections, but we get a lot of those. So you'll see that the next few days are pretty full for Nate, and then he's got openings as they go. So it's, again, another way for us to keep track of those things. Another thing that's really, I really appreciate as a plan reviewer, I do have a step to follow, to approve as part of this plan review process. And as a plan reviewer, sometimes you'll have things submitted by an applicant who's anxious to get a permit, but it's submitted at a time when you're at a training or a conference or something. This online system allows for a plan reviewer to log in from any computer anywhere and to look at that document and then to approve it right there in real time. So as an example, there was a document I was waiting on about a year ago. It was before the pandemic. I was at some training, Got a call from Weston saying this developer submitted this. They're anxious. I was able to get right on there immediately, approve that in real time online, and move that forward. So I want to be sensitive for time. I wanted to cover this thoroughly for you, but I also want to make sure that we have time to talk about some of those important legislative issues. So are there any questions that you have for me? We could talk about this for a long time, actually, but I'm going to try to keep it a little concise.
Real quick, like Chad. So any of the applicants, let's say like, for instance, what we've gone through up on the east side here, where there's maybe some issues of concerns, and that they want to make sure, that certain things are getting done. So in that note section, is that the only place they can add that?
No, there's other ways we can flag, and I apologize. I don't know. I can't walk you through the steps right here, but there's ways you can flag those actual properties, so that when those permits come in, that we have those special issues identified. Another thing that we've implemented is on the first permit. Sometimes we've found in the past that things like conditions, covenants, and restrictions weren't being recorded. That's something the developer's responsible for, but we certainly want to have in place. So now we've got a safeguard in this system that before the first permit for a subdivision can be issued, there's a flag that comes up and says, check to make sure these have been recorded. That's simply us going to the county system and logging on and saying, there they are, they've been recorded by the developer, and that makes sure that that step's been done. So that's another way we've closed some gaps that were occurring before. And so that's another really powerful part of this, is that we can flag things. We can have fail safes in place to make sure that we avoid those when we can, those problems.
Okay, very good.
And then the other one I have is, so let's say they're going out to do a footings inspection. Is there a checklist so that there's some consistency from from inspector to the inspector?
Yeah, so we've been working on that for about the last year. We don't have those checklists loaded onto this program yet. They are internal at this point, but that's the plan, is that there'll be an actual PDF that will come up when those inspections come up for that, for all the inspectors, so that there can be some consistency in the steps that are taken. And that is something that we've implemented internally, but that we still need to load onto this online program. So eventually, when an inspector goes out to do a footing inspection, it'll bring up a number of things they have to check as they go down that list. Right now, we're doing that. It's just not on the system yet. So it takes a little while to implement these things, of course, and we're still excited that we've got some improvements to make, but we're also excited. I think that the biggest thing that we've seen that's a benefit, well, first of all, I failed to mention that we're doing online payments now too as well, so people can do everything online. But the other thing is that this really helps us to help applicants to do better submittals. We can see exactly what they've submitted. We can get in there and say, this is what you need to fix in there. We can look at their plans right with them. We can log in and say, we can see what you submitted. This is the change you need to make. And then again, the other benefit to that is that once we have those plans approved, we have a permanent copy of that site plan stored on a server that we can access very easily. We get grammar requests that Kim processes. For those new ones, this is so very, very easy for us to go quickly access that. We don't have to go downstairs, go through a box for an old permit. We just go right to the permit. And we are scanning files in still and adding some of those old ones that will eventually be accessible through this permit process as well. So,
Plus, it allows the homeowner to kind of track his project as far as how his contractor's doing and what process
that's
they're at.
right. Yeah, the homeowner can get their own login, and they can track and see where the contractor is as well, and see if there's something the city's been waiting on for a while. They can look and see if that's the case. So
okay, well, this is great. I'm glad to see the progress we've made this past year. Go ahead.
Well, Chad, this is individual homes. Subdivisions go through a similar thing?
They will eventually. That land use module the trigger hasn't been pulled on that. We're working on the business license module right now, but eventually subdivisions will have a very similar process. We have a separate program we use right now called Project Tracker, but eventually...
But it's not like this. Yeah.
It's not. No, it's a different interface. Eventually, it'll all be like this. It'll all be online. That other program also does not allow the developer to go in and look at the comments. This would, again, allow them, as soon as the comments are there, they can go in there and look at them immediately.
But you're working on that for the sub.
We are. We are. Right now, the business licenses, we're probably 2 months out on pulling the trigger on business license, and then that land use entitlement module would be the next one we'd work on. That's probably several months out before we get that one. But.
Okay. No.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd be happy to talk with the other item on there, the subdivision during just the regular meeting. That's not a super complicated one. So.
now have time for Mr. Crane to come back and educate us. Again.
It's already there. Let me just go through really quick, just some of the most dire bills that are up there right now. Paul Ray last year proposed a bill that would have eliminated or given the developer the opportunity to be able to do building inspections and also do first-time plan reviews or plan reviews. And so what would happen if that were the case? What would have happened if that were the case is that a developer could come in, all he needed was his engineer's stamp, and then his inspector would go out and inspect the building and give them C of O. And so that was one of the things the bill did. The other thing the bill did was absolutely prohibit any type of design standards for the city. In other words, any requirement for brick, any requirement for siding, any requirement for the height of a home, any requirement for the size of a home, all those would be eliminated. Zero. You could have no requirements. So we went in, I met with him, with Nicole Cottle. We negotiated with him. We said, we don't think that there's really a problem out there with most of us. Most of us are doing our inspections within the 14 days that we're supposed to have them done. We're doing them right. And so can we, as a league, get all the information over the next year? We did that. We collected it. There are about a handful of cities that are not doing it right. Out of the 269 cities, or 249 cities that we've got. This year, I sent him a copy of the study. I also sent the business and labor a copy of the study. The builders have a very strong presence on the Hill. Paul Ray's bill this year is worse than it was last year because it actually gives all of the building permit fees, all of the plan review fees to the developer. So the developer would not essentially pay anything if he has his own inspectors. That's kind of like the fox guarding the hen house in a lot of ways. Because, I mean, you ask, even now, I don't question the fact that an engineer would write a report a certain way or decide a certain material ought to be used or certain pipes ought to be used that may be cheaper than this type of pipe and still meet the standards. But I've got to tell you that to take us out of the picture completely would eliminate everything Chad's just been talking about. So I can tell you what will happen. The developers will choose their own inspectors and first-time plan reviewers, and I think that would be a couple of $100,000 hit just for our city alone, and we wouldn't be able to keep them employed. I mean, how do you know how many inspectors you're going to need when the developers are allowed to hire their own? And so essentially it would destroy the inspection process that we've currently got in place. Consistency would be out. Safety, I think it's a big question as to whether or not safety. Immunity, those guys don't have immunity. I don't know how they'd pay their insurance, to do that. But yeah, it's a disaster. The bill is a bad bill, and he's not backing off. I can see that there are that handful of cities that are doing it wrong. I do, and there ought to be a consequence when you've got plans, and there's one city in particular that I know whose plans are not approved for months. In fact, half a year to a year. I get it. Something ought to be done. But when you got Layton City who does it right, and everybody admits that we do it right, you ought not to be penalizing cities that are doing it right. So that's a big one. And that's at the top of our list when we talk to them.
You've got a hill full of developers. What kind of chance does that have?
Isn't Representative Ray, isn't he the Home Builders Association
for Northern Utah? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you know where all this is coming from. But he's
definitely the phone numbers we all need.
Yes.
So that's a definite conflict of interest.
Oh, yeah.
But they don't ever do anything about it, do they?
You'd think. They never do. And closed meetings, little thing called caucus, they can do. So anyway.
And Business and Labor Committee, is it Steve Handy's committee?
No.
It's a joke.
No, Business and Labor, no.
New assignment? I don't.
He got a couple of new assignments.
Yeah, I think he was, I don't know. It's a good question, Clint. We should look at that.
Well,
But that's one we need to talk about.
Could the implications even go so far as, I don't know if you've driven through Colorado City and Hilldale, where they purposely don't finish a home.
Yes.
So there's no tax liability for it. And so, I mean, beyond safety and aesthetics and all of those issues, there's the potential that the home is never officially finished and never assessed as a finished home.
Do you know, that's a great point, because the bill doesn't address that in any form. It does not say that the home has to be finished within a certain amount of time. Once you take it out from our building inspectors require that something to be done every 6 months. They would not require that. So anyway, that's one. Second one is auxiliary dwelling units. I'm sorry. It's my mask, but auxiliary dwelling units. There are two bills up there. One mandates that cities allows permitted uses, secondary dwelling units in every residential zone in the city, and that they essentially waive all of the building permit requirements, such as access and everything that the building inspection would require in order to have a second unit in your home. Those are all waived. The second bill, Representative Ward's bill, I think is a good bill. It has potential, but it says that if the city determines that it wants to allow auxiliary dwelling units in the city in a particular zone, then we have to treat them just like we would if it were an extension of the family. We can't require, for example, sprinklers be put in or separate air conditioning units be put in. That essentially it needs to be treated as if, when mom and dad, all the kids move out, you've got maybe a young couple that want to go to Weber State, that want to move in down the basement. You don't need to go to all the work of changing the entire home in order to accommodate that additional dwelling. The idea that Representative Ward has is that it would expand the number of units that are available to people. And, as your kids move out, I'm the first one to tell you that I do have empty rooms, or for a little while you do. Then they come back. It's amazing. But so it is a good bill. We're working with Representative Ward. The other one is just it's just a mandate. And that's probably the very first thing we ought to talk about is, mandates are expensive for cities, and preemption should only happen in the rarest of cases when it comes to cities. Fees are another thing. We had John Dougal talk about fees and do a survey of 11 cities and the fees we collect. So I anticipate a fee bill, that there will be a bill which requires that we go through a special process to be able to assess fees. Everything from building permit to the stormwater fee that we charge and the lighting fee that we charge. The training requirements for Planning Commission, mandatory 4 hours from now on, which I think is a good thing. It does not apply to councils, but I think it's an excellent thing. Clarification on development agreements. The fact that if you've got something in there that changes the zoning, you better go back through the Planning Commission and do it right. We talked about that, and do it the way you would if it were zone change. Annexations and incorporations, we won't worry about. We're working on that. But citizen committees, there's one group that want to mandate citizens committees to review police activities. So we'd have to develop one, having an independent citizens committee review all of the use of force cases that our police officers would be involved in. There's another one that doesn't mandate it, but allows it and then gives instructions on how to set it up. The next one is you look at the Channel 5's list. That's called the Brady list. If you watch Channel 5, the list that they're saying is secret that no police department will ever reveal is what we call a Brady list. It's a list of police officers who have lied or who have been dishonest in some area of their life, whether it be fraud or they've taken evidence or something like that. They can never testify in court. They're called Brady officers is what they're called. And the bottom line is we don't have any Brady officers in Layton because Alex has a very strict policy, which is supported by the council, that if you lie, that's worse than doing the original thing that you've done. If you lie or are dishonest about something, you're pretty much gone. In fact, the chief is funny today. We're talking about that list, and he goes, "We don't have a list because they're all gone. Anybody that does that is gone. Dishonesty is a no tolerance in the city." There's a couple of use of force bills, and then this is the bad one as well. I don't know how hard you guys have worked on your education, but there's a bill from a Utah County legislator that says you can't ask anymore whether a person has graduated from university. You can't ask what their education status is. So if you do, it's illegal. It will be illegal. The only time you can is if they need it in order to do the job, like, for example, a paramedic or an attorney, but those jobs that do not specifically require a certification or a bar or something like that, you can't ask anymore. I have no idea what the underlying reason for it is. We don't ask. We don't ask any. I'm tired of asking anymore because there's always a little situation somewhere that they came up with. Anyway, that's a really quick summary. 7 o'clock. If you have any questions on anything that comes up, let me know. It always looks scary at the very beginning, and then at the end we've managed to tone it down a little bit. But anyway,
Representative Handy's economic development.
Is that which?
Economic development.
Econ. Oh, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
That'll be good.
That's a good committee for you.
So thank you, Gary. We appreciate that. And certainly that discussion is going to carry on next week. So again, council, if you have anything that you'd like to add to the list, just contact Gary and we can make sure we cover it next week with our legislators. Okay, it's now 7:01. So I apologize. No, I can. I was just going to say it's now 7:01, so we are past the time for our regular scheduled council meeting. So that would conclude, we will now conclude our work meeting. And I know, Kim, you need a minute to kind of get things going. Council, are you okay to just proceed? I mean, we haven't got a lot of items on the agenda, but certainly if you need to stand up, let me know right now. Okay, then we'll wait a minute and have Kim get set up before we get started. Okay, that's totally fine.
Did we close the meeting?
Yeah, we closed the last
All
meeting.
right. We got a minute?
We're just waiting for Kim to start up the recording, then we're going to start.
Are you ready? I'm ready.
Yeah, we're ready. Sorry. This is a short meeting. Okay. We'd like to welcome everyone out to our Layton City Council meeting for January 7th, 2021. A new year, hallelujah. But with that, I'd like to bring the meeting to order. And as customary, we always have a pledge and a prayer, and each month we kind of shift it around so each council member has an opportunity to conduct that. So tonight, I'll turn the time over to Councilmember Bloxham.
You want to join me in Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our Father in heaven, we are grateful to bow together and meet and convene this Layton City Council meeting. We're grateful for the country that we live in and the Constitution and the laws that protect us. In this time of strife and uneasiness, we ask you to please bless our country and those who are in leadership positions, that they may be granted the spirit to do the things that would be pleasing to thee and would be pleasing to the oaths that they have taken. We are grateful to meet together and to discuss the activities of our great city, and we ask that thy spirit to be with us so we may have our minds enlightened and we may be able to do the business to which we have been entrusted. we're grateful to live in this country, and we ask for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Bloxham. Okay, council, we do have a few sets of meeting minutes to review and act on, so I will look to you for action or discussion on them.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of the Layton City Council work meeting October 1st, 2020, the council regular meeting December 3rd, 2020, and the council regular meeting December 17th, 2020 is written.
Okay, is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, it's been moved and second that we adopt the meetings as written and presented in your packets. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item number 2, which is our municipal event announcements. I know this has been slim to none, but does anybody have one or anything going on?
Just that we had, a couple of us had the opportunity today to attend the museum's Centennial Lecture Series on lost industries, and it is now available on the museum's website or Facebook, whichever. It was a really, really interesting one about the sugar industry, the canning, farming, and stuff that took place the first 100 or so years in the city, and it's really worthwhile to go on and watch.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, we'll then go ahead and we don't have any verbal petitions or presentations either, so that now brings us to a portion of our meeting, which is our citizen comments. This portion is open for our citizens to bring to our attention anything that we need to know that isn't currently on our agenda. So therefore, if you're here to make a comment on any of the items that are our consent item or our public hearing, we ask that you wait and make the comments during that portion. But certainly any new business or items that you'd like to bring before us, you're welcome to stand up to either one of the mics here and state your name and address and let us know what your feelings are.
Good afternoon or night, Madam Mayor, council members. I give you a month off from seeing me. Thank you for all you do as always. Let me start off by addressing that. And just to bring up the same issue that I've been bringing up. I am at 233 Cold Creek Way in Layton, obviously. We've been having, just as a reminder, a habitual problem with regular speeding and ignoring of signs and instructions to stop or yield as appropriate in the neighborhood. The neighborhood has 2 schools on it and has access to 3 significant parks, including Ellison across a major crossway. To give you an example, 2 days ago, I actually was almost hit myself by a speeder going about 55 miles per hour and blew through the stop sign. If, kids were involved, they wouldn't have the mindset to be able to stop and properly get out of the way of these vehicles. I know that there's problems like this throughout the city, and I recognize that as mine is probably one of many. This has become a major thoroughfare from Gentile to Hillfield, and now that Hillfield has a very healthy pathway to the freeway, people are utilizing this more than probably even Layton Parkway to kind of pop through to get onto the freeway. And people are usually in a hurry, and I don't know where people are hurrying to nowadays, but people are hurrying. I was given the instructions last time to maybe come up with some solutions or something to maybe present to you guys. So looking at the National Association for City and Traffic Officials, they produced a research report for both the city of Michigan and Pennsylvania that came up with 12 different alternatives to help reduce the speed through a residential area. Some of those things included raised humps that we've kind of talked about before, and know that there's some preclusions to that due to snow plows and access ways. There's also chicanes, which kind of help do the road and the narrowing. The fact is the road is really wide, and the fact that it's wide encourages people to speed. including sometimes side by side in illegal manners. The potential of maybe putting marked crosswalks in the neighborhood, putting bike lanes to help make it feel more narrow, maybe even some structures. They even recommended putting more trees in the area to help divert the attention of drivers to slow them down as they're going through the neighborhood. I'd be happy to share this with anyone who'd be willing to. I can send the link and just kind of pass on the information. On that same note, we have seen an increase in police presence, which I am incredibly grateful for. Over the course since the last time I saw you, I've seen 4 people pulled over in our neighborhood for speeding or breaking laws. So super appreciative of that, but it also illustrates that there's a problem. And obviously, tickets go so far, and we're really grateful for those, but we're hoping to maybe take another step to help try to reduce that speed as well in that neighborhood, or maybe encourage people not to use it as such a major thoroughfare. So thank you again, and if there's anything I can help with.
Well, thank you. And she needs your name.
Oh, Daniel Denhalter? Sorry about that. I thought I could.
I knew your name.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So Daniel, your list of 12 suggestions I think would be very beneficial, and I'd like to see you share them. I'll have Mr. Jensen kind of let you know which one of our staff members that needs to be sent to, or to him, I guess, probably to Alex.
I'd be happy to.
And I do want to say, you know, we're aware of this, and you're absolutely right. We've had many issues coming before us now as far as speeding, and I know that one of the other additional items is even painting where you've got a wider street there, even painting double lines down the middle to kind of helps people understand that, and like you said, narrowing up the streets. So, I mean, there's a ton of ways to do it. It's just a matter of I guess our staff deciding which direction they want to take with it. But we appreciate your patience.
I'm here to help remind the city council, so thank you
I know,
guys.
I love the fact you're very punctual. You let us know that, and you're still here, so that's great.
Happy to be here. But seriously, sincerest thank yous to you guys. In reference to the same item, some of the examples that are actually in Layton City currently, on Antelope Drive, there is raised humps before a roundabout as you get off of 89. That's something that the city has done. And there's other examples of that. There's obviously large dips that we've all suffered from before. Mm-hmm. So we've implemented some of these things in this great city, just looking for other alternatives. And I know that, again, once the cat is out of the bag, there's going to be a lot of people who will want something like this. But I appreciate you guys letting me take the time to address this with you. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to bring any concerns before us? Okay. Well, seeing that there's none, and I know any online comments, Gary would have let me know prior to this if there were some, but I don't believe there was any, correct? Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. We can even actually come back to them if we need to, so that's no problem at all. I think we'll just go ahead and move on to item number 5, which is our consent items. We do have 2 items before us tonight, and Mr. Colburn is going to be presenting both of those. So, Mr. Colburn, if you'd like to address us, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. Bring before the council 2 simple agreements tonight between Layton City and UDOT. The first one is Resolution 2102. It's a cooperative agreement between Layton City and Utah Department of Transportation for the construction and maintenance of the Oak Hills Drive Commuter Park and Ride within the scope of the US 89 Farmington to I-84 in Davis and Weber counties. Utah Department of Transportation is engaged in constructing the highway construction project that I just mentioned above. UDOT has awarded a contract for the project, and the design build contractor will design and administer construction of the project to include a commuter park and ride at Oak Hills Drive. Layton City will be responsible for operation, maintenance, coordination with UTA, and policing of the commuter park and ride facility, including the connecting Adams Canyon trailhead. UDOT will maintain pavement surface and markings. Staff would recommend the council adopt Resolution 2102, and if council would like an example of the exact same agreement we have and have been dealing with for a few years, and it has been going good, is the commuter park and ride at Antelope and 89. It's the exact same agreement.
Council, do you have any questions regarding this item?
Terry, I have one, and maybe you can answer, but it will include the policing of the commuter park and ride facility. Does Layton Police currently police the one on Antelope
Yes.
Drive?
They'll drive through with their patrol cars and whatnot. Matter of fact, I talked to the chief about it today in an executive staff meeting.
Okay, and then adjacent to this will also be the Adams Canyon parking lot, the new one. And is that monitored by Layton Police as well, or by Davis County Sheriff?
That I couldn't tell you. I would imagine both of them would do it from what I've seen in my experience.
Okay.
I would imagine they would both drive through something like that.
And both of these, I'm sure we could add cameras to as well, correct? If we,
Yes.
so that there's additional monitoring going on, so, that's good.
Is there, I remember, maybe I misremember, I don't know. The restroom facilities for the Adams Canyon Trailhead, is that come after this? After this is complete? Or is that just a different part of the project?
I think that's a different part of the
And that's the
project.
county, or is that who's going to do that?
So that's a whole different.
I don't know if that's
development.
our Parks and Recreation. Alex, do you know?
Yeah.
The city's in that building those, will be responsible.
Will that be adjacent to this? If this is the trailhead parking lot as well?
This is a park and ride, which is on the west side of the,
It's on the west.
to the west side of the Village Road.
But
The trailhead parking will be
On the
on.
other-
I thought they were side by side.
Yeah, it sounds like,
No, the Village Road will bisect them.
The-
People will come north out of the park and ride on the flyover. So
Okay.
that Good, great pedestrian access, really. Park and ride's meant to be, for park and ride, and then, some overflow parking for the trailhead parking. So, yeah, the city will have responsibility to maintain and operate the restroom.
okay.
Okay, so maybe just to quickly recap for those that are online watching, basically to answer Mr. Morris's question is the difference between the two parking lots. You have Highway 89, and this particular park and ride is between 89 and the frontage road. Then east of the frontage road will be the trailhead parking for Antelope Drive, or for Adams Canyon. So in essence, the park and ride could act as an overflow for Adams Canyons on those busy weekends and that we've experienced in the past. So anyway, that's just kind of a clarification for those online. Any other questions? Nope.
They're both east of 89.
Right, but there's the frontage, they're split by the frontage road.
Pedestrian access.
Right, with pedestrian
We're good.
overflow. Okay, gotcha. Okay, let's go ahead and, so you guys are clear, good on that one? Okay, we're going to go ahead and proceed to item B then.
Thank you, Mayor. Bring before the council Resolution 2104, a betterment agreement with the Utah Department of Transportation for the traffic signal powder coating at SR 232 Hillfield Road and 1425 North in Layton. It's up there at Hillfield Road And if you turn left and head west down 1425, I think it's the bank, First National Bank, is it, that has a branch right there, Alex, on the corner? So that's the intersection they are going to install a traffic signal at. UDOT is, okay?
Oh.
Resolution 2104 authorizes the execution of an agreement with the Utah Department of Transportation for a betterment agreement for the traffic signal powder coating at SR 232 and 1425 North. UDOT will advertise and administer construction of the work. The costs shown in this agreement encompass the additional work associated with this project. Layton City has agreed to participate in the cost of the powder coating and other items associated with the project. Subject to the attached provisions, UDOT will complete the betterments for the traffic signal powder coating at Hillfield Road and 1425 North. Total reimbursement to UDOT by the city for these betterment items is $3,686. Staff would recommend council adopt Resolution 2104. And as council and mayor will know, that's the standard we have chosen on the traffic signals throughout town. And basically our street lights is that powder coating. They would just put up the silver ones. So that is what the city is paying for on this project.
Okay. Any questions, council? I think this will tie in well with knowing that that's kind of our quote, our midtown area. So we'll keep everything consistent through this.
Will that have all the crosswalk though?
Yes.
As well?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Okay, council, that brings the consent items to a close, so I'll need action. If anybody would like to make the motion on the items presented.
Madam Mayor, I make the motion that we approve the consent items, Resolution 21-02, the cooperative agreement between Layton City and the Utah Department of Transportation for the park and ride, and Resolution 2104 for the betterment agreement on the traffic signal.
Okay, it's been moved and second that we accept the consent items as presented. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nada. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item number 6, which is a public hearing. And the details of this hearing will be presented by Mr. Chad Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This is a request for an amended plat. I'm going to bring up just a short presentation for you. The request is for the Layton Parkway North subdivision. This will be the first first proposed amendment to this plat. The address is there, 223 West, 475 South, essentially on the north side of the parkway from the new Intermountain Layton Hospital. So the area that's the subject of this subdivision amendment is outlined in red. That yellow includes the entire boundary of the subdivision. This amendment is just specific to a very, very small portion of that subdivision on the west side. It's amending Lot 6 and Parcel A. This shows a copy of the plat. This is the existing plat. So you can see Lot 6 and Parcel A. Parcel A is a large detention area, stormwater detention area, and then Lot 6 is there. It's a building lot. The proposal is to increase the lot size. You can see that new configuration. It goes up by just several thousand square feet. That's the new Lot 7 and Parcel C. The reason those lot numbers change is because it's an amended plat, so they just have to change those numbers as they amend that plat. The reason for this coming before the council, there was an easement that was along the property line for the former Lot 6 that's being moved, reestablished along that new property line. You can see that there outlined in green. And this was reviewed by the Planning Commission. They're recommending that the City Council approve this requested plat amendment, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
So all of the landscaping and everything they've done for the detention basin, that needs to be moved 15 feet to the west?
Well, the applicants here to maybe answer some of those questions, but I think they've anticipated some of this, and they've essentially put the landscaping in anticipation of this
Okay.
amendment.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. This is a public hearing, so council, I need a motion to open the public hearing and hear any comments. Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved in second. Okay, the public hearing is now open, so anyone in the audience or anyone that has been online that had communicated earlier today, certainly you're welcome to voice your opinion, and you're welcome to stand up to the mic. Once again, state your name, your address, and then you can proceed.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. My name is Jeremy Jessup. I live at 227 Larson Lane, so I'm the guy behind the fence that this would affect. And I don't know if this pointer works or not, but my house is right here. And so my question to the gentleman that just briefed is, if they've put in this landscaping in anticipation to where this is going to go, so you're telling me the dirt that's there is where it's going to go and the grass that's there is going to remain?
I can answer your question after you.
Okay, so that's my question. I moved to Layton 3 years ago after a PCS move in the military. I've been in 32 years. We came to Layton because we like it. We left Tooele County, went to Boston, came back, and we chose Layton as our home. In that time, IHC Hospital promised us that this would be a community garden. Then we heard it was going to be a fire station. And now we've got a battered women's shelter going in right behind my house. Obviously, this doesn't make me super happy. I know that I feel bad for those women, certainly. And I realize, little Jeremy, you guys are going to do what you want, pretty much, and so is IHC. But if I don't complain, if I don't tell you it upsets me, then I can't complain. This frustrates me greatly. I mean, if it's going to be where the dirt is now and where the grass is now, I guess, I mean, that would be fine. You asked for us to bring solutions to you. I'm curious to know, would part of this, would the city or the developer or anyone be willing to raise my fence a few feet so I don't have people coming into those areas looking over my fence? When I got my daughter and my wife and my granddaughter in there, it's super concerning to me. So I appreciate you allowing me to speak and voice these concerns.
Okay. Do we want to address any of those or just wait? Okay, Chad, do you mind addressing a few of those?
I'm going to actually, we've got our applicant's representative here. Maybe he probably is more aware of where we're at on the actual construction as far as where the lines are and things. But could you tell us where we're at? I'm not exactly sure if we're at a certain point in construction where they're finished with the grading, but maybe we can get an answer here.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. My name is Corey Morris, representing Intermountain Healthcare tonight. I'm a consulting civil engineer on the project from Great Basin Engineering. We have worked with staff in the preparation and submittal of this application. The landscaping that is in place and the pond, the detention pond that's been constructed is in anticipation of this lot line adjustment. Basically, it's a 15-foot shift of that western lot line and lot 7 as you see it. If the plat were not to be approved, I guess we would go back and probably sod the 15 feet over to the east to the currently platted lot line. So, all the infrastructure is in place beneath Larson Lane, and we've met the development agreement requirements in preparation of the development on lot 7 as far as setbacks go, and we are personally volunteering our time. I live right down the street from this lot, and think could be a great asset to the community. So that's that. Thank you.
I got a question. How much distance is there between this gentleman's backyard and the new lot line that's going west?
The new lot line here,
From there to the house.
Yeah, from there to the house.
I'd probably have to pull up an aerial photo. Let me do that really quick.
And is there any,
About 50 feet, what Corey's telling me, so.
So while you're addressing that, I can address, I know one thing that Jeremy, which thank you for your service, by the way, regarding that community garden, I know that IHC is still planning to proceed forward, just not at that location. It will be across the street, actually where the bulb out is, just east of their existing building. So they do want to continue with that concept. And the purpose of this battered women's shelter was mainly for the protection of those that have been battered. They've discovered that with some, just for their own privacy, that when they bring them into the hospital there, they still are, there's so much emotional and exposure going on that it would be nice to just kind of, give them a more comforting area, which is why they opted to build a separate building. Am I correct there, Mr. Morrison?
And just for clarification, this is not the actual shelter. This is essentially an admitting type of a function
Right, it's
to
more
the
of their-
program, counseling, that type of a function. So it's more of an office type use. There won't be any overnight stays in this particular structure.
Okay, that's good clarification, and hopefully that will help you understand more as far as what's going to take place there.
so
Okay.
tell us, I'm familiar what's supposed to take place there then, Chad. So
I'm sorry, what was the question?
what's going to be built there?
Oh, it's an administrative office for Safe Harbor,
But
which is
there's no housing, there's
no housing, just it's a place for them to do admissions, to do some counseling, those types of activities.
At night, nobody's there.
Nobody's there overnight. It's not a overnight shelter, just an administrative office, and then some of those, like I say, admission type practices would be done there.
Are there any requirements for fencing in that?
Well, the shelter wouldn't go on that lot. That's a
I understand
detention
the
area
shelter
there. So
won't.
yeah, there wouldn't be any requirement for fencing for that use.
What about for the detention?
No, there's no requirement for fencing along the detention area.
Serious?
Yeah.
How deep is it?
I don't know the exact depth of that. I'm sorry.
Give me
Maybe
a
Corey could
guess.
answer that. 3 feet?
Who said 3 feet?
Our
Oh, okay.
applicant?
I
Yeah.
thought it was Tom, and I didn't believe Tom. Okay, I mean, I'm just thinking if it's detention and you got 3 foot of water there, it doesn't make the safest thing, even though it's only 2 or 3 times a year.
Right. As part of the development agreement with IHC, there is a required setback, a building setback line that the applicant has observed as part of their building plan. So it's the building for this use is set back quite a ways from the adjacent residential. And that, I don't have that map, but there is a map.
Well, I'm
that
not
outlines
worried
those.
about the people that go there. That's
Okay.
it. If I was a kid, I know right where I'd go.
Sure.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, I can tell you, I drive up and down that street pretty much daily. And that detention basin is being used already. I mean, people are looking at it kind of as a mini park.
Yeah.
I've seen that there quite a bit, so,
You can always go swim in the creek, Dave. It's almost as close.
I didn't hear that. You're muffled. Is that a
Jeremy-
good thing, huh?
Yeah.
Were you
Good.
aware, Jeremy, of just the administrative functions of this safe harbor? Yeah, that,
Sure.
You can go to that
there's
side if
two
you'd
of
like.
them, so.
Outstanding. I'm new at this. Probably should have done this my whole life.
So am I. So don't feel bad.
So, let me see, your question was I aware of the administrative?
Yeah,
So,
just basically if you're
so
aware of kind
I
of
am
like
aware
the-
of that. I'm
Okay.
also aware that they're going to do examinations of domestic abuse. I have a 17-year-old daughter, a very beautiful 17-year-old daughter, very beautiful wife, not bragging, it just is what it is. 7-year-old granddaughter that's over all the time. It's super concerning to me, and it's awkward, the slope of my property. When I'm on my back porch, I can totally see over my back fence into this parking lot. So everyone that goes in that parking lot is going to be looking at my house. So again, if we're talking about, if we want to be good neighbors, which it's nice you're going to put the community garden across the street, it'd be a hell of a lot nicer if it was behind my house, right? And you could have put, if you could have put the women's shelter over at the hospital, that would have been nice. And there'd be separation from the huge parking lot, the hospital and that other building. I get it. God forbid, I hope my women in my life are never abused. And it's important. So I'm not disparaging that in any way, but this is my property. This affects my property value. We want to sell our house now. We want out of there. It almost feels like we're being run out of the neighborhood. That being said, to be productive, you did mention that if this wasn't approved, you just move it 15 feet east. Why not just do that? Why not just be a good neighbor and move it 15 feet east if you can? Because there's nothing I can do. And that would be a great solution in my mind to build some goodwill with the community after a lot of it seems to have been lost. I mean, part of the reason we moved there in the first place is, hey, what are they going to do with this field behind my house? Oh, they're going to make a community garden. That's awesome. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's a Better Women's Shelter. So again, if there's any way, if you don't move the plat, please raise a fence, put a cinder block fence, whatever, put a fence behind our properties. So we're shielded from what you guys are putting in there. And please move it to the east. If you can, move it 15 feet to the east. What's that going to hurt? Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Just a reminder to the council that we're not here tonight to talk about the actual use of the property. We're here just to talk about a shift in the property line adjustment that requires this hearing because we're changing a public easement. But that's a public utility easement that's shown there in green. But again, we're not here to talk about the merits or what the development will be of that. This is just, if this had come in as a new subdivision, we'd be looking at those same type of, does it meet the minimum standards of our subdivision ordinance? And so that's what's before you tonight is, does this meet the minimum standards of the subdivision ordinance? And this has been reviewed and we're recommending that it does meet that minimum standard and that they still have adequate room for the drainage of the subdivision, which was the function of that parcel A, now parcel C. So that's the thing we need to focus on tonight is just the action of amending the plat rather than talking about the specific use of the property.
With all due respect, sir, that's what I'm here to talk about. And I'm tired. I drove back from Dugway Proving Ground 85 miles to come here after work. I'm smoked. I didn't want to come here, but that's what I'm here to talk about. So please consider all the facts. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, if you'd like, just a reminder, state your name and your address.
My name is Arlene Belknap Waldron Adams, and I live at 469 South Flint Street, which is the corner of Flint and Larson Lane and Layton Parkway. So again, we have been told so many things that are going to be going on here in our special little place of the world. And things have happened that, at first when they said they were putting in the hospital, there wasn't going to be an emergency room and there wasn't going to be a helicopter pad. And now it's right across the street from where I sleep. There's lights shining in my windows all night long, every night. And now we're hearing that you're moving 15 feet west. You don't need to. You can just move to the east where there's nothing built there now. There's going to be a fire station, which we've known for a long time. There's going to be a tanner clinic, maybe. There's going to be a senior apartment place, maybe. A subdivision. Are we building houses over there? We were never told we were building houses over there. We were told we were getting a smaller Farmington station kind of place with retail stores, with places for our families to go, things to do, right by the train station. Sounds great. Not houses, not apartments. There are people who wanted to do things with their property that have been turned down because of accesses. Well, what is this access that we're talking about now? So my question, one of my questions is that piece of property that's just west of where the fire station's going, is that whole entire thing the women's building with parking and everything there? Or is the parking going to come down and they're going to walk up the street past my house, park across the street from literally across the street from my house? They're going to walk right up the street, past our houses, through our neighborhoods. Is that what's happening? Are we having parking for the women who are going to the administration building up there where they belong?
Maybe rather than doing question and answer, I'm taking some notes, and I'll be happy to address any of these questions after the public comment session's over. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Another thing that's kind of alarming to me is that just as you're coming up down the hill, there's that ramp that is going down. Is that going to be there forever? Because it's a dangerous place to have traffic coming in and out of there, in my opinion. I'd be very fearful.
Do you have any other questions that you want me to answer for?
That's about it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Arlene. Okay, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address us?
I just have a few comments. My name is Chris Moon. I live at 3455 Overlook Drive. My mother subdivided Larson Lane. I've been on the project and involved with it. I think me and Alex are probably the only ones that have been together since this started. But the subdivision has been lied to the entire time. They've made promises that have not been kept at all. It was supposed to be a park, drainage way. They were supposed to give us another access out of there. You know, there's 13 houses. Most of us have moved out, 7 or 8 of us have moved out, but it's not right what Layton City, the promises they've been made and what they're having to deal with.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
It's Chris Moon.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my mother was Mary Fisher, and she subdivided, bought the house, and did that whole neighborhood.
Okay.
And I owned a landing strip along there so that we couldn't build on it, which Layton City told me was illegal, and proceeded to do what they wanted.
Okay, is there anyone else that would? Okay, that's okay. We'll be patient. Just come up to the mic again. State your name and your address if you could.
My name is Frank Fowler.
Wait until you get up here so she can grab it.
Oh, it'll just make things go faster.
Sorry.
I live at 405 South, 250 West.
You need to say it in the microphone, it won't pick up.
I live at 405 South, 250 West. We're right in the middle of where it comes from the parking lot to where the circle and the place out. We have a number of children in that little area. And it's keeping them safe. I mean, can the grandkids go out and play? It's difficult. And when you all ran for office, what was your first priority? IHC or the people that you're going to serve? Because it's the people that voted you in office, right? Who do you serve? That's all I have.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address us? No questions online, right? All right.
I got one.
Well, I was going to say, I know Chad's going to answer some questions, but if you've got one too.
Chad, maybe you could answer this along the way. The fence would probably have to be worked out between them and IHC, correct?
Yeah, again, the item before you tonight is just a subdivision amendment. There's no change to that property line along those properties, so there's really not even to consider related to that tonight. It's just whether or not we should move this line. And really the reason for the council's involvement is because there's a utility easement there. So we're really looking at that line right there and whether or not it meets the standards of the code related to subdivision. And, we found that it does. I want to just answer really quick the question about the parking. There'll be a parking lot associated with this use that's been proposed there. Parking's on this side. There's a building over on this side. So the building is really not adjacent to the homes that are there adjacent to that drainage lot. It's over on the other side of the lot. So it'd be over in this portion. But there will be a parking area located just to the west of that. And so there will be parking, adequate parking, meet our code requirements on the site where people coming in and out can park, and those that work at the facility can park as well. I think I heard some other concerns related to previous process, the approval. I don't know that I really have answers for those tonight. Just we're looking again at the very specific issue of whether or not this very specific amendment meets the subdivision regulations, and we found that it does, and we're recommending approval.
So the purpose of this is so that lot can gain 3,000 square feet. Is that the reason why?
Yeah, they need a little extra room to accommodate that use that they're proposing there. So it's to allow for the required setbacks to be met. They had to adjust the building because of that required setback between the homes that was required as part of the development agreement. They've had to adjust that building to another part of the lot, which necessitated the need to adjust some things on site to make that work. I will say that this is it's a one-story building. It's a very low profile, very attractive building that they've proposed in this area. So unfortunately, I don't have the elevations with me tonight, but the other thing I'd say is that we would be more than happy to meet with any of these residents and show them those plans and walk them through what's been proposed so they can feel a little bit of, a little more confident about what's going to be built there. But it's a one-story building. Parking is located over on this west side, adjacent to those residential lots. The building's over, I guess, more lined up with that street connection there.
So you moved to 15 feet, right? That's what you're asking. And I keep hearing we're not into doing whatever we're doing. We're wrong because all we're talking about is 15 feet. But you mentioned what's wrong with going the other way, 15 feet.
It's just, again, we've got plans for the other lot as well. And I think, trying to keep that lot the same size that it is now is vital to those plans. So again, the biggest issue there from a city staff perspective was, would this impact negatively that drainage facility? That's been looked at. We've found that it still has adequate capacity to drain that subdivision and to act as a detention facility for that. So really it comes down to being able to, again, have a little bit of extra room because of that design that was accommodating that previous requirement to set the buildings back from those residences a certain amount of distance.
Well, what's on the other side?
That's a future fire station site.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Can we just cut out 2 trees on that side? Just joking.
May I speak to that, Mayor? Just to clarify, that's a great question that's been asked, but the reason when they needed additional space to accommodate the office facility, the reason they could not go east is because that's the fire station site. And the fire station site is minimum as it is. And so we indicated that there's no ability to move east, otherwise we don't have the opportunity to build the fire station there. So they look to go west by the 15 feet.
So I got a question.
Fire station will be built.
So knowing that they need to gain 3,000 square feet, is it necessary to take the 15 feet to the north towards Jeremy's home, or can you actually add that footage on the west towards the detention
Sure, that's a great question. It's not a square footage need as much as it is just that distance. They need to have additional distance to meet the parking standards and the setback standards, landscape standards of the code. So it's not a certain square footage they're looking for as much as it is just to have some extra dimension there to accommodate that building and the parking.
Well, and I think that would help understand the fact that if the lot stayed where it was, not being able to meet the parking standard would force parking out onto the streets.
Yeah,
So by
yeah.
allowing the additional space to allow the parking to stay on site and not in the neighborhood is a positive.
Yes, definitely a positive outcome for sure.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, Gary, my understanding is this is an administrative decision, not a legislative decision. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And I just want to let these folks know what you're up against. And that is there's a specific state code section that says that as long as these folks meet the ordinance, you have to approve their application.
That was my question, because it's an administrative decision and they've met and complied with the ordinance that we've set.
That's correct.
Meaning that we don't really have a decision to make about whether to deny or accept this if they've met the ordinance.
If it meets the ordinance, and that's the question. It seems it does. So.
You have a question, Tom?
No, just a comment. I agree totally with all that, but I also have to feel with the citizens when they don't know what's going in there. I myself didn't even know what was going in there. And I understand that it's an administrative decision, but I think we should have sympathy enough to listen to their concerns and take those. We can't do anything about what's happened in the past, obviously. And we really probably can't deny this, but we certainly can encourage IHC to work with them on a fence if they possibly can. If they can't, that's not our business either, but we certainly can encourage those things and try to make it the best for them as well.
Right.
Understanding that it's not our prerogative to demand that they do that.
Right. And so hopefully in the idea of being good neighbors and trying to maybe bridge some of the stuff that's happened in the past, my hope would be that IHC would, if we are going to agree to this boundary change, that we have discussions with these homeowners to make sure that they don't feel like, that they had a rug placed out and pulled out from under them. Because we are, as a city council, have to follow the state law if we have to. And if they've met the ordinance, then it does a disservice to our duty to go against that and put the city at potential liability for that. So hopefully you can kind of see where we are kind of stuck between wanting to grant a lot of the remedies that you want, but being bound by what the ordinance requires.
So why didn't we have the meeting then?
Can I approach Cody quickly?
Yeah, in fact, anytime you guys would want to make a comment, please come up.
It's still a public hearing.
Yeah, it's
They'll
open.
help the
so you're
country
welcome.
bumpkin understand all this nonsense, okay? You guys put out a public notice for a hearing, but you have no authority to affect any change? Are you kidding me? You've got to be kidding me.
Why even tell us?
So, I mean, Gary can probably answer that. Go ahead. Yeah.
You can deny the 15 feet.
So when you eliminate, when you move a boundary, a lot line, you also move the utility easements. And so the reason for the public hearing is more for the utility companies than it is actually for anything that's going on the site. The site plan issues will be dealt with when the building actually is approved and the development is actually finally approved. So things like fencing and those types of things will all be approved at the site plan issue. The reason for the public hearing is because if you eliminate an easement that Rocky Mountain Power is in or somebody else is in, then essentially they lose the opportunity to continue to have their line in that street. So it's more for the utility companies. And that the express language in the statute, unfortunately or fortunately for administrative determinations, is if it meets the code and if they paid the fee, in the state of Utah, you have to approve it. The council doesn't really have a choice on approving it. What you can do, I mean, you can change the standards. The council can always change the standards legislatively to provide something, but it's late after the application is filed in the state of Utah to do that. So
The meeting is late.
that's the reason it's for.
If the meeting was earlier before that was filed, then maybe we would have some say. But it's like the decisions are made when no one's around, and then you tell us what we have to do, and we have no say.
Okay.
What country is that?
So I appreciate your
No,
You
I'm
want that?
serious, because I live there, you're affecting my world. And I have, that's my world. And I see talking about being a good neighbor, they haven't been a good neighbor so far. Why should we expect it in the future?
What step is this at in the process, Chad? Is it?
As far as this amendment?
Subdivided, right?
Yes, this is already subdivided, so we're just again adjusting a lot line that's already within this subdivision. It's already been it's a recorded subdivision.
So this has gone through quite a few renditions, hearings. It had to in order to get this far. So this is just a small change that really should only affect the utility companies, but I can tell there's a lot of angst over what has happened in the past.
Where do you live? Do you want this right behind your house?
Excuse me.
So,
Excuse me, sorry, I don't want to call or get unruly. That's not the case here. We definitely want to hear everybody. But again, and I understand it's hard for you to move, but we need you to step up to the mic just so that we can capture the audio. So go ahead, Mr.
again,
Jeremy.
this is right behind my house, right behind, okay? Looking right at it. I saw one public notice. We've been cut out of everything that's happened. I'm glad you guys have had all your little meetings up until this point. I thought I was showing up here tonight to voice my concern on something you're proposing, not to just get railroaded and say, guess what, sorry, it's done. We can't do anything. I mean, everything can be adjusted. I don't believe that nothing can be done. I similarly don't believe if you move 15 feet to the west, you jeopardize your fire station. I don't believe that, okay? I was an Army engineer and I did vertical and horizontal construction. I don't believe that. I believe you could move 15 feet to the east.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering if you guys understand, if you all.
Excuse me, I'm not being rude. I just want you to know, we want to capture your comments.
Sure.
So that's why I'm saying,
Sure.
speak into the mic.
Yeah, Chris Moon. I'm just wondering if you guys all understand this subdivision and this road that's there, and when Jeremy says that's right behind him, because it's a road that goes into Larson Lane and these 13 houses, and there's no way out of it. Like they're dead end. So comes around, dead end. Cars coming around trying to find what else is at HC or where they're going. Dead end. Neighborhood dead end. They have to go around to this building to get out onto the parkway. On the fence issue, I'm sure there's ordinances or laws. I don't think the fence can be more than, 8 feet. So, when you say goodwill or try to get a higher fence, I don't even know if that's an issue that could possibly be done. I wonder about that because of the city ordinances.
Thank you.
So I have a question or an idea. What about putting it 7.5 feet on each side? At least that would take most of it up from Jeremy's house. Isn't there something, or 8 feet and 7 feet, or there's got to be some way to compromise this. Absolutely. I've been living in my house now for 31 years, and I've seen a lot of changes. And I want peace and happiness, beauty, just like everybody else. That's all. And I like to be informed. I mean, it's like we don't ever know for sure what's happening. What is going in back there? Why can't they tell us? Why can't they tell us now instead of after they put the foundations and the roads and the utilities in? I mean, seriously.
My name is Deborah Fowler, 405 South, 250 West. I am concerned for the parking lot initially. Garbage being thrown over Jeremy's fence, increased traffic, increased cars. I'm also concerned about privacy issues for not only the residential people, but the clients of the center. Why can't the women's administration offices be built in the big field area? Is that all spoken for? It is all spoken for, every single piece. It's just a small, cute building It can't go someplace else. I would like that considered. I don't know what to say other than I think we're very frustrated that the communication has been next to nothing. We do not know what's going on. It changes from hearing to hearing, actually. There's nothing that's been solidified or confirmed to us. Maybe we're worried about nothing. Maybe we have more to worry about. Maybe 13 houses will now put their houses on the market, which would be very sad because it's a beautiful little cul-de-sac. I just hate to see something like this come in the way of that.
Okay, thank you.
When kids don't have some place to go and they just are driving around in their car, they really like dark places and parking lots. And that little parking lot area you put out there, I go out occasionally, and it starts to become a safety issue. Is my wife safe? Are the neighbors' kids safe? What about our possessions in our garage? I mean, it's just like, okay, killing us. Oh, my mother also built that subdivision, and I'm quite attached to it.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other concerns? Chad, I think we need to answer the question maybe perhaps as far as the development. Obviously, we're not the property owners. We don't make those decisions. We just approve whatever's been brought to us or disapprove it. So do you want to kind of address that issue for these folks?
As far as the who's developing,
moving it, yes,
yeah.
moving it across the street or wherever. I mean,
Sure. Yeah, these are properties that they're owned by IHC, or else they have sold some of those or have some of those under contract. The city doesn't propose these buildings. We just, as applicants come in with proposals for development, we review to make sure they meet the requirements of the code. So that's what we're doing in this case, and we're just looking at, in this case especially, a very administrative function of whether or not it meets the codes and ordinances for a subdivision. And we've reviewed that. We've looked at that. In terms of the other developments that are going on there in the site, that are going on the site, we've had planning commission meetings where we've discussed an assisted living center here, multifamily development in this part of the parcel, and then this is Tanner Clinic, and we've reviewed those at the planning commission. There has been public notices for those projects as they've gone through, but again, Tonight, we're not specifically discussing development proposals. We're just discussing whether or not this meets our subdivision ordinance.
So I will say this, we are just, like has been stated several times now, I mean, basically, we're just looking at the amended plot for tonight. However, knowing that and hearing what you folks have been what all of you are voiced your opinion on, I do think that certainly our staff has offered, and I think that we will, if you want to, we can set up some educational meetings with you and kind of really let you know what we know at this point. Sometimes we don't know a lot of it yet, but what we do know, or what has been presented, that we could address that in a separate meeting for you. So with that, council, do you have any other questions or discussion regarding this, or?
This is a delicate issue in that we're talking about private property. We mentioned that not to argue or to, but there are property owners involved, and this decision tonight, as we've discussed, is an administrative decision. The property owner, the applicant, has met all of the requirements for us to make this decision tonight. I would wish that, I would hope, I know wishes and hopes can't, not worth much, but that IHC would if we're talking about, and if Chad, if you have the contacts as well, and we have a representative of IHC here, I mean, that's really the you want to be good neighbors. It's IHC and these property owners discussing this and talking about it. The ordinances are already in place. The requirements are already, they've already done what they've been required to do. As far as being informed, it's their property. It's theirs just as much as your property is yours, and so that's where we are. That's really where we are tonight. And when the site is when you're talking about the building, and that'll be coming up, and that'll be noticed as well, and we can discuss it then as far as what the council has to approve or disapprove. But really, the neighbors are IHC, and that's the relief would come from them.
So when voting comes up, we vote for IHC because they're going to take care of this.
Sorry, I just have one more comment as far as IHC being, and it's Intermountain Healthcare, it's not IHC. As far as Intermountain Healthcare is concerned, it's about being a good neighbor. We've had to call them several times when there was just a field of weeds there to come and mow. They promised the last time that they would keep that down below 18 inches or so. Several times above 18 inches, called them time after time after time. If they're going to be a good neighbor, they need to be a good neighbor without having to be reminded, like we have to remind our children to do their chore. So if they're going to be a good neighbor, be a good neighbor.
One last comment. I know
Thank
it's
you.
going on, but I kind of don't care because it's my house. So I just wanted to get on the record, you're Mr. IHC here, right? So I'm encouraging you to go back to your plans, talk with this gentleman who seems to think we have no options, get your rulers and your Sharpies and your pencils out and see how you can be creative. That's a big piece of land to the east of you. I'm not buying that. That's a big piece of land. Unless you're going to shove 7 apparatus in there, I'm not buying it. So please, as a good neighbor, I'm new here. Let's start new. Do something for us. Okay, you've already done something to us. Please, as a good neighbor, be a good neighbor. Or else, I mean, there's other options we can pursue as well, because obviously we get no relief here because administratively, I get it. I'm not trying to insult you at all. So, thank you. That's it.
I hate to look up there because it hurts. I've been a public servant most of my life. I worked for the University of Utah, and I worked in their IT department. And we could never say it's impossible, and we don't do it. We get told when we do, and we have to figure out a way to put a round ball in a square peg. And that's how life is. Or at least it should be.
Thank you. Okay, council, are you ready to take action? Okay, I'll look for a motion then to close the public hearing and take action.
Madam Mayor, I make the motion to close the public hearing and to accept the amended plat on the Layton Parkway North subdivision. I guess there's no resolution on this one.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we approve the amended plot for the Layton Parkway. I'll take a roll call vote on this. Councilman Thomas?
Aye.
Okay. Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
Councilman Foxham?
Aye.
Councilman Day?
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, that brings our public hearing to a close. It actually brings us down to our last and final item. In case anybody has any unfinished business they'd like to present, I'll entertain that at this time.
I have just one item to bring up, and that's Alex Chad. I brought up the fences a couple weeks ago, and I have a fence next to me on the Mary's Meadows that's not been completed yet, and the houses are about getting finished. They've done everything up to that phase except for the stub in. They haven't finished the stub in, so I'd like to see them finish that.
Did you get your answer?
Yeah, they both nodded their head, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Okay.
I just wanted to bring it up.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, that's the purpose of this. Does anyone else have anything they need to address? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to close our city council meeting.
So moved.
Okay, second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, you folks, for taking your time to be here this evening.